So what I did is asked a couple of people to send in their advice for the WAPT test. Some of them are a bit too shy to do their own videos or voice recordings, and so they typed up their responses to me. That means what I've done, in order to not just have myself reading it out all the time, I contacted other few friends who very kindly agreed to read them out for me. And so, yeah, these voices are not necessarily the people speaking, but other people reading what they wrote. Okay, so I just realized something, and the advice that people are giving is overall advice, and I realize that we are 1 month before the WAPT test, and the reason I'm chuckling is because if you're like me, you wouldn't have started with the bulk of the work yet by 1 month before WAPT. And so please, please, please do not get intimidated when so-and-so says, in January, start doing this. In February, start doing this. That will obviously be useful for people who watch this in the future, like next year or later this year or whatnot. But for those of you writing WAPT in 2017, do not be intimidated and look at the points where they advise on what to do if you have 1 month until WAPT. I've got a halo on my head. Anyway, guys, this is going to be a raw video because, as you can see, I don't know if you can see, it is 8:58 p.m. and I'm sitting at university, and I want to get this up before midnight for you guys so that it is still exactly 1 month before WAPT. It is now past midnight, and so I've missed my own deadline of getting it up. Tray fizz pops for the win, especially when they fizz out like that. Anyway, so I'm not going to spice it up and put all lovely stuff on it. I am just going to put it all together, and that is it for you, because yeah, I really hope that this can really just encourage some of you, because I know how it is to be studying for this test, and I just have so much hope and joy for all of you who are preparing for it, because it is a momentous moment when you sit down to write that exam. And yeah, if you can just prepare for the best way, in the best way, and just, yeah, let me not ramble on. Goodbye. Well, not goodbye. Here it is.
Here is some WAPT advice. Number 1, follow what has worked for you thus far. With WAPT being a month away, I think it may be overwhelming to try drastically different approaches if they haven't worked for you in the past. This is mostly because of the amount of work that needs to be covered. So if you're a visual learner, draw diagrams and use color. If you're a verbal learner, go ahead and read aloud and revise aloud. General tips other than studying. Keep hydrated, keep fed, sleep now and again. Do not neglect your current coursework if you are in the last year of your degree. Remember that passing WAPT is what counts, but your actual score for your degree is what increases your rankings on the list of candidates. Number 2, I stuck to what worked best for me. At first, I made many notes, but as time ran out, I read and reread and relied on YouTube videos for explanation. In terms of physiology and anatomy, this greatly helped. A few of my friends and I formed a study group, and we set out objectives to be revised with each other. It provided a deadline to know certain sections, but also provided emotional support. Number 3, I took physiology and medical cell biology within the School of Anatomy as degree subjects. I suggest you make use of your course resources if you took subjects that were to be tested in WAPT in your degree. Familiarity aided understanding. The prescribed textbook had questions that can be attempted if time permits. Trying to cram anatomy will not work. At this stage, it is wise to remember that things are named things for a reason. Relating the Latin meaning to its position, appearance, etc. will help. As a medical student, anatomy is important, and I feel that we will always have to revise it. In terms of muscles and bones, picture it in your head. In terms of histology, understanding structure and function will help you remember. Number 5, relax. Do not be tempted to postpone writing WAPT. It is MCQ based. The worst that could happen is that you fail and you have to rewrite next year. But you would have to write again next year either way. Do not underestimate the knowledge that you may already have. My suggestion is to rely on YouTube videos and summaries when answering questions in the section that is not negative marking. Do not merely guess when you are unsure, but reason through your options. There is more than enough time in the test for you to use logic and the foundations you have acquired from your attraction towards biology and the human body thus far. Number 6. Exclude negative thoughts. Steer clear from people who do not exclude the same flow as you. Pre-test may be stressful, but do not try anything that you are not used to. Keep your daily routine. Number 7. Personally, my faith and my family helped give me the edge. I was going through some tough times in other areas of my life during studying for WAPT. The situations that were occurring could have been enough to demotivate me and distract me from giving my best. You may not believe in God, or you may not have a family to support you, but I know that you have positive things in your life that are fueling your drive. Embrace those things, whether it be a friend or a quote you've held dear since grade 3. Remember your blessings. Remember that your life's worth does not equate to the score of WAPT. Your journey is unique and you are meant to learn from it. Follow your path, even if it means rewriting WAPT 3 times. It will assure you that you really do want to do medicine. Godspeed. We're rooting for your sincere, humble soul.
So this next bit of advice is from someone who asked to remain anonymous, and she says that her advice is more geared towards people with a degree in biology, specifically physiology and medical cell biology. That is exactly what she did, and however, I'm sure that it applies to other people as well. So yeah, here it goes.
First of all, be organized. Have 3 books or files for ANAT Phys and MolMed. Print out the objectives and place them in each file. 2. Time planning and management. I took Jan and Feb to get organized and gather information sources such as textbooks or notes. From March to June to start with subjects that need the most attention. For me, it was anatomy. I hadn't been taught muscles or dissection, so I started there. What textbooks to use or recommended textbooks that were helpful? Marie for anatomy and physiology, Gray's Anatomy, and Albert's for molecular medicine. How I studied. I answered every single objective of the 3 subjects, so I know I had covered all the work. I wrote out all the answers. You can always type it. Even though I had access to previous year's summaries, going through the textbooks and finding answers was how I learned. This takes half the year because it was on top of my 2 third-year subjects. July. I went on holiday in July, but I studied every day. It was a good time to get a lot of work for WAPT done. Without other subjects in the way, I also revised. August. Finishing up studying and starting revision, I reread the notes and I started reciting the muscles aloud and revised bones. September. This is a very difficult time as everyone is very highly strung about writing the WAPT test and other test assignments, projects in BSc on top of it. That's why it's important to start studying early in the year. On the day of the test, a few of my friends and I couldn't sleep the night before the WAPT test. We've been studying for it the whole year and the pressure is insane. Don't stress about this. Adrenaline will get you through. Get to the venue early and make sure you're there and just calm yourself down. If you studied everything well, you can do this. The test. The test is extremely fair and only asks according to the objectives, nothing more. So study with the objectives. 3 hours exam time was enough time. You can go to the toilet if you need to, but they will send an invigilator with you. Most important advice. If you are in 3rd year Bachelor of Science, like I was, do not neglect your subjects to study for WAPT. You need to do as well as possible in 2nd and 3rd year. There are not enough spaces for everyone who passes the WAPT, so the next criteria is your academic marks from your degree. If you study for WAPT early in the year and in your free time, you will still be able to do well, but it is a lot of hard work. Especially if you come from a biology background. Do not take information as known and don't leave out studying any of the objectives, no matter how repetitive it may seem to you. Understand each objective well. You'll be surprised what you can forget under pressure. So the better you know it, the easier it will be to answer the questions correctly. Also, don't just read paragraphs of material. It's important to be able to recognize images and diagrams as well. For example, in histology. A lot of pressure was taken away because I had a good background in physiology in second and third year and was studying cancer in third year. Cancer is a significant section in the test and it takes time for the concepts to make sense when learning it for the first time. So, if you aren't doing it in class, I advise to get help from a Bachelor of Science or medical student. For MolMed, it's important to revise DNA concepts, even if you study them in first year, because there is so much info and you have to know the correct sequences of processes. Do not skip anything, revise it. Study HIV and malaria. These are broad topics with a lot of information. I would recommend answering the objectives and then reading around them to build your understanding, which will help you to answer the questions. If you're in BSc, some extra advice. Don't neglect your coursework for WAPT. The work is difficult and it's important that you give it the respect and effort it deserves, especially at Wits, in my experience. It's important to show lecturers that you are interested in your science degree by doing well and keeping involved and not just using it as a stepping stone into medicine. The BSc offers skills and information and access to amazing lecturers, so take it all in and enjoy it. Don't neglect everything while you're focused on WAPT. This is just my advice. Try keep perspective. This is an emotionally and physically exhausting year, but once it's over, it will be worth it. Medicine is so worth it if it's your passion, so just hang in there. My advice, stay healthy and active to help you study. Stay in the library and get everything done. Cut out the negativity. You need to keep positive and be selfish this year. It's okay that 99% of your life is spent studying because it will be worth it. Those you love and support you will stick with you. The haters, doubters, or jealous people will just drag you down. So, bye.
This comes from Janisha. Janisha had a tough week and she had flu, and she still managed to get this through to me at around about midnight last night. So tops to Janisha for making the effort to pass on some words of advice. She says, "Hi everyone. Firstly, congratulations for being accepted to write WAPT. I know it must have been a bit nerve-wracking waiting for that invite. I'm sure many of you are experiencing a ginormous amount of stress, so here are a few tips to make the journey a little easier. Since I study best by making notes, the way I prepared for WAPT was to make summaries from the prescribed textbooks, which is really informative. Initially, being so excited, I summarized everything, which was taking ages. But in my excitement, I also realized that what I was doing was wasting a lot of valuable time, so I then followed the objectives closely and made my notes according to them. After I made my notes, I learned my work, but not like a robot, but rather with the aim to understand what was going on, as I didn't know what to expect in the exam. Anatomy. In addition to the textbook, which can be a bit overwhelming with all those muscle names and don't forget the blood vessels, eek! The internet helped quite a bit. The best bit of advice I can give is to understand how structure fits function. If you understand, for example, why the radius and ulna are articulated the way they are, you will understand how pronation and supination works. If you are able to access the equipped site for those physiology MCQs, then do so. You'll be able to get the hang of how the examiners are likely to ask questions, but also you'll be able to apply yourself. This test isn't all about regurgitation. If you haven't started studying, freak out. ... She says, kidding. Draw up a study plan and follow it. Aim to do a bit of anatomy, physiology, and molecular medicine every day, so you don't feel too overwhelmed by one topic. If something isn't sticking, then come back to it. Now, when the big day comes around, don't talk about how stressed you are with others. Don't engage in conversations where people are discussing content. Listen to an inspirational song or make a new friend while standing in the line. Oh, and don't be intimidated by the amount of people around you. Take deep breaths and just go give it your best shot. Remember, try and study the most difficult section first so that if you do run out of time, you'll be able to pick up the easier material quicker. You'll probably feel like you overstudied after you've written, so don't sweat it. Good luck and all the best.
Aim for a plus minus 70% average between your last 2 years for your varsity marks. Rewrote WAPT on the 28th of September last year, and I got the email on the 3rd of November to give me the results. Not everyone gets the email on the same day, so someone else who's writing may get the email before or after you. Everyone gets email, and the email will only say if you met the requirements or if you didn't meet the requirements, which means you passed or failed, respectively. You don't get told your marks. I only had a month to study and I focused on the textbook and I passed. But what helped me the most was the questions. If you don't feel like you are going to finish, I suggest you go through the questions before you continue to study. With MolMed, make sure you know cancer, immunology, and infectious diseases really well. They hardly ask the other sections. In the text anatomy, have some A-type MCQ, multiple choice questions, which are not negative marking. So do those first because you have a chance of getting them right, even if you don't know them. For the rest of anatomy and everything in the other subjects, they are negative marking multiple choice questions that are true or false. So for each question, there is 5 sub-questions. So say you get 1A right, 1B right, 1C right, 1D right, but you get 1E wrong. Then instead of getting 4 marks, you'll get 3 marks. So if you know some of the sub-questions, then only answer those and leave the rest because they can lower your mark if you get them wrong. But for each question, the least you can get is 0. So you can't get negative marks for that question. What I mean is, if you get 1A and 1B right, but 1C, 1D, and 1E wrong, you won't have -1 marks for question 1, only 0 marks for question 1. Which means, if there is a question that you don't know any of the sub-questions for, then just guess all of them, because leaving all of them will be a definite 0, but guessing might give you some marks. When you write, make sure you divide the time you are given by 3 for each section. So if you have 3 hours for the test, I don't actually remember how long it was, then after 1 hour, make sure to move on to the next section, and at 2 hours, move on to the last section. If you finish one section before the 1 hour, then still move on to the next section, and at the end, if you have any time, you can go back to any section that you didn't finish. The reason I say this is because you need to pass every section in order to pass the test. So you don't want to have one section which you barely looked at or wasn't able to read the questions as carefully. If you are running out of time, then stop with the question paper and mark the rest of the questions to make sure you have something down, because leaving them out will give you a definite 0 for them, but guessing them may give you some marks, and then, if you have time after guessing, go back to reading the questions and correct any guesses that were wrong as you go along. Also, they say the time of the test is something like 7 a.m., but that is only the time they open the doors to register and sit down. I suggest you be there by the time they say, just in case, but only go in to register once the huge queue is shortened. Because last year, I sat in the hall for like 3 hours before the test started. And you can't really study in there because you have to give your notes and bags in. So rather stay outside and study till you need to go in. Unless you don't like cramming before a test, of course. Being there early made me feel like I was forgetting information, but I also think it calmed my nerves to read the questions more carefully when I finally started. So I guess just choose what you think will be best for you.
Okay, so when studying for WAPT, in my opinion, the best thing to do is find a YouTube channel that suits you. And when I say suits you, some people like more pictures, some people like more videos, some people like the raw information. But basically, it boils down to whether or not you are coming from a clinical or a scientific background. That is very important because there is absolutely no use in spending 40 minutes watching a video. 10 minutes was the video, and then 30 minutes was you searching what the terminology means, what the concepts mean, what the themes are. So that's something to be aware of. Studying anatomy alongside or as I progressed through physiology was more effective for me because of time management. The volume is huge and one typically underestimates it. But also make a note of everything that you did not go through so that you can go back to it, whether it is before the test or after the test. Studying doesn't stop after the test because all of those things you will be expected to know, not only in the test but also once you begin. So just remember, one does not need to be familiar with the work, one needs to know the work. The most important thing is to pray. Pray that you do well. Pray that the second years aren't that many, and then pray that all the third years pass. Please pray that all the third years pass.
Study according to the objectives. The information from there is more than enough. Going beyond the scope of the objectives will only overwhelm you and set you back on very important study time. My approach was to just cover as much as possible because I did my BSc undergrad. I had the anat physio and mole med knowledge, so that would help me ease into the study process. Getting a hold of second year medics lecture notes is very helpful. Keep it simple, just study according to the objectives. Don't panic, do the most you can. The exam isn't set up to trick you. Get enough rest and a good breakfast. Sounds like the typical advice, but so necessary. Stress and anxiety levels are on 100 that day, so what sleep and breakfast do is minimize that. Good luck, your dream is valid. If you don't get it this year, that's okay. Push on, stay true to your purpose, and it will come to pass.
Yes, I started studying about 4 weeks before, properly, but I literally sat at my desk and I went nowhere other than to shower, go to the loo, eat, and occasionally sleep. I don't really have any golden words of wisdom except that I just put my head down and sat on my chair as if I was super glued to it, irrespective of what was happening around. I put off my phone. I told everybody that if they wanted me, they couldn't have me because I was busy for the next 4 weeks, and that's pretty much how I got through it. So apologies again, no real words of wisdom, but that's pretty much what I did. Just head down for a solid 4 weeks and shut the world out and got through the work. Can't think of anything else to add to that. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Try to not put all your eggs in one basket, as in don't focus purely on only one section. Try to do at least a little bit of everything. I didn't do so much anatomy, so I started with that while my brain was still fresh, and then moved on to physiology and genetics once the exam got closer. YouTube is your friend. I stuck up pictures of anatomy everywhere, and every time I walked past them would revise. Don't think of all the stuff you need to get through. Think of all the things you already know. Positivity is key, but getting started is also key. Get plenty of rest the night before. Cramming only disadvantages you. Eat a good breakfast and don't drink an energy drink.
Hello, my name is Kamu. I'm a third year medical student. I wrote the WAPT in 2015, but I think they haven't changed much. So I think my advice might be useful to you. So, general study tips. I think the most important thing is to follow the objectives. Just make sure you know the objectives, like the information you're required to know, as shown in the objectives. Make sure you know it. That's the most important thing. Uh, how I approached studying? Well, what I did was I read through the objectives, and then I went to the prescribed textbook, and then I went to the specific chapter for maybe that section, and then I started studying the stuff. So I didn't just blindly study. You can't do that. Just read through the objectives, go to the record, like the prescribed textbooks, and then when you're done, just go back to the objectives and make sure, like, yeah, I've covered this, that, and obviously the textbook has like a lot of unnecessary information, so you might need to with maybe write an objective and then write the specific information like that, like make summaries for yourself. If you, I think that would be easy. Yeah, with anatomy and physio, their book is really easy to study from. I think very easy. So I think it's in your best interest to use that, but also being aware that the most important thing is what's on the objectives. For molecular medicine, they have like different sources, like they have like 2 prescribed textbooks, I think, and some like internet sources like Wikipedia, and some genetics online resource. With the online resources, you can use theirs, but their textbooks might seem like a lot of work, but if you feel like you have enough time, just study from the prescribed textbooks for a moment. But if you feel like you don't have time, I'd recommend that maybe you specifically Google for the information that's shown on the objectives document for a moment. But yeah, I think you'll be fine if you cover the objectives. I remember I studied in the last minute, and that was a bad idea, but luckily I still passed. So what I did was I used my notes for physio and moment for some objectives instead of using the textbook. But for anatomy, I sticked with the textbook because I stick with the textbook. Yeah. Advice for those that haven't started. Start now. Otherwise, it's gonna be hell. When you see those objectives, they're a bit overwhelming. Like, please just start now to help yourself out, because I feel like you might really want to get into medicine, so you need to take it seriously. So yeah, there's also this other thing for physio. There's this thing that the second year medical students at Wits use. It's like a quiz kind of thing. It has physio questions, and I think they're extremely helpful. And each they're really, really helpful. They're not like a memo or anything of questions that they ask, that they take from to use in the web, but I think they're very, very helpful if you can get a hold of that. But it might not be possible. Don't think it's like a need or a must. It's really not. It's just one of those things that might help you out. So yeah, on the day, just go there, get enough sleep, go to the test, read everything carefully, just don't just randomly guess things, especially for the questions that have negative marking, don't just guess. Don't just guess, because you lose marks. But if it's like a whole question and you know absolutely nothing, then obviously you can guess. But if it's like one question and there's some options that you're not sure about, it's better to just leave those ones out and just stick with the ones you've chosen already. I think you'll be fine if you know the objectives. Like, the objectives are the most important thing to know. I hope my voice note is helpful. So yeah, good luck. I hope you get in. Yeah, bye.
Cool, guys. So I hope that that advice helped you somewhat and encourages you as well. And yeah, all the best for the last 4 weeks before WAPT 2017. And if you're watching this in the future, all the best for the one you're doing. Let me just give some of my own advice. So I also locked myself in a room in my house for a few weeks, probably about 3 or 4 weeks before the WAPT exam, similar to what Ashley said earlier on, and I just sat and worked and worked and worked and worked. I had the whole room, the bed, the floors, the table, the chair, everything was just covered in papers. I was very fortunate enough to have done a Bachelor of Health Sciences undergraduate degree, which means that I had the second year notes of all the second year medical students, because our second year was the same as the medical students, and so I did a full course in molecular medicine, physiology and anatomy. And yeah, I also majored in physiology in my third year, but you know, I still failed the WAPT that year in my third year. I failed the physiology component. I thought I didn't need to study physiology because I was majoring in it, and as they say, pride comes before a downfall, and I most certainly did need to study it, even though I was majoring in it. It's different. Majoring it is different to the finer details of physiology that gets tested. What else? I did use a prescribed textbook, but not really. I did kind of, and I did kind of not, because I had the notes. And sorry, just got distracted there. I was fortunate enough also to have the anatomy background, because I did my honors in anatomy and then masters, which I'm still busy with. And so last year I didn't really have to study for anatomy, so that took a lot of the workload off for me. As a couple of the other people mentioned in these previous words of advice, they mentioned equip questions, the second year questions, the second year medical student physiology questions. They have an online system where they get access to MCQ questions with amazing explanations after every single MCQ. I was very fortunate to have someone, you know, let me use their account and practice with it. But yeah, it's not vital. But I mean, if you are able to get access to it, then that's really, really cool. And what else? Yeah, basically follow the objectives. Last year in 2016, I found that they asked a lot of histology compared to the previous year. And yeah, it's 1 month before WAPT. Start now. There's actually no more time for procrastination. And hit Starbucks, hit the library, hit work. Time to crunch now, guys. Many people have done this before you. You can do this. I must say, what got me through is just knowing that the amount of work I put in is the amount that I'll be rewarded. And personally, I work not for myself, I work for God. And knowing that, you know, like, I don't need to stress about anything, I don't need to be anxious about anything, because at the end of the day, His will be done, and I just need to give it my best shot. And so do all of you. You all need to give it your best shot, and then you will be exactly where you need to be after that. And as I said, I wrote the WAPT test 3 times before I passed. Well, my third time I passed. Both times I failed physiology. I struggle with physiology. On the day, take some nice sweets and a bottle of water and get loads of sleep the night before, and eat a good meal on the morning. It truly makes the biggest difference. Just don't have too little sleep the night before, because then everything you've worked for will be compromised. Truly and sincerely wish you all the best, everyone who watches this, whether it's this year or in the future. Take care, and God bless. Guys, I almost forgot the biggest piece of advice I could give you, and that is YouTube. Make YouTube your friend. Use things such as Khan Academy Medicine, handwritten tutorials, osmosis, all of these kind of things. I'll put the links to some of them in the description of this video, and really make use of this amazing resource.